Hello, good day, greetings wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining True Hope Cast, the official podcast of True Hope Canada. Now, this podcast, True Hope Cast, really takes a deep dive into mental health's many physiological and psychological aspects. This is the show for you if you're looking for motivation, inspiration, knowledge, and solutions. And that is really what we're all about here at True Hope Canada. True Hope Canada is a mind and body-based supplement company dedicated first and foremost to promoting brain and body health through non-invasive nutritional means. And for more information about us, you can visit truehopecanada.com. Today on the podcast, though, I welcome Colleen Ryan-Hensley. Colleen is a Navy veteran, mental health expert, and founder of #Binging Sober, which is a rewards-based system that enables people to develop steps, habits, and beliefs that impact their vitality. Today on the show, though, we are going to be discussing the rapid growth of substance abuse and depression in recent years. Enjoy the show. All right, Colleen, welcome to True Hope Cast. Thank you so much for being with me today, with us. How are you? What is going well?
I'm fantastic, Simon. Thank you so much for having me.
Beautiful. Well, just as an intro, why don't you just let us know who you are and what it is that you do, please?
Sure. I am Colleen Ryan-Hensley. I am an advocate for mental health and an expert in mental toughness. And I am launching the world's first points system for vitality. It's called #Binging Sober.
Well, that's interesting. That's a point system. Okay, you just got to tell me about that. That sounds interesting. When anyone says world's first, you're like, okay, my ears are up. Let's go. So please tell me all about it.
So it's all about really becoming aware of and controlling and finding balance in those things that really impact our energy. So a lot of times, we're just talking about escapism a little bit. A lot of times we habitually use these tools of escape that we're not really thinking about what we're doing, and we're aiming to improve our mental state or our state of mind. And a lot of times it actually drains our energy and makes things a lot worse. So binging sober is not about sobriety. I'm hoping or aiming to redefine sobriety in that I really want to focus on a lack of intoxication of those escape tools that we're using.
So when sorry, just to interrupt you there,
Sure.
When you say escape tools, do you mean those types of behaviors, be that subconscious or an unconscious behavior that we just kind of like automatically react and just go to deal with tough times?
Yes, absolutely. So all of those things that we have a lot of access to, especially after the pandemic, now we can have anything delivered to our door. I just read recently there's like 815,000 shows streaming on. Isn't that crazy? I mean, that blows my mind.
That's actually driven me away from it because the quality of the shows is so poor. I have this high standard of nothing's good. If you just want to watch something that's just nonsensical and just funny and easy to watch, Friends doesn't exist anymore, and they're never going to do that again. So nothing's going to beat that. So I think my wife and I, we might watch one show every 3 months and then span it over a few weeks, but it's there's just too much. For me, it's just I can't be shifting. Once you're shifting through all of that, you just forget. I don't know, maybe I've just got an old mind, but I just can't deal with that.
I completely agree. I want 3 options. I want one of each genre, and then
three TV channels. It wasn't so long ago when I grew up, there was 5 channels. Yeah, me too. Only 2 of them were half decent, and all the good shows were from 5 p.m. to maybe 10 p.m. on a Friday or Saturday night. Exactly. And then there was nothing good on the telly, so you didn't bother with it.
Exactly. So yes, exactly that. All of those escape tools that we use that just take us down that zombie life, this passive type of living that doesn't do what we want it to do. It doesn't really help us feel better. So as I was saying, just becoming aware of those things that we use, and it's really individual. I mean, it could be different for everyone, and how they impact us or yourself over the day, the week, the month, and then controlling those things that you can control around them You gain and lose points throughout the day, week, month, and the point is to balance. So really be around that 0 on what is called the scale of vitality. That's the tool that is launching with Binging Sober in January of this year.
So how, like, can you take me through, like, so it's January, is it an app? Do I do it myself? Like, how does it work, and how would it work for like an individual like myself? And let's just say, are we working with a particular type of escapism that I might go to? Like, can you take me through like a user experience?
Sure. So I'm talking right now. So, I mean, gosh, it's only 9 weeks out. I can't believe the New Year's almost here, but really want to build a community around the movement, and then work as a group, and there will be one-on-one options as well. But I'm going to have all of the tools available through my website, ColleenRyan-Hensley.com, that are going to be used for this. So really the first few weeks is about, there's awareness exercises throughout, because it's an ongoing practice. It's not something that's one and done. It can change over time how these things impact us. So first you'll have a chart, like a points chart, and it'll be tailored to you. So these types of things that you find yourself using, that you're aware of or not, like you said, they could be subconscious, like you're not even aware you're doing these things, but you are. And then tracking how that makes you feel. And there's a really easy, fun way to do that. So the impact of it, not just that you're doing it, but the impact, and not just in the moment, but the next day. So you're really paying attention over time, how these things impact you, so that you can use your scale of vitality to take yourself up and down that scale, with the 0 in the center. Imagine the 0 in the center. And a lot of times what I found, this is a practice, it's a process that I've developed over the past 20 years or so. And I've really been really making it shareable over the past few years, that you'll find that maybe this idea of what you think is your best or your happiest or what you're aiming for isn't accurate. And I'll give you an example, because I've struggled with depression, alcohol abuse, post-traumatic stress, and that's where all of this has come in to my life, is this practice. And really, if I'm at, like, imagine a little scale with 0 in the center and positive 10 being like the absolute best, what you could, or let's say what maybe society says you should be feeling, happy and smiling and energetic and bouncing off walls. I don't know. And then the negative 10 is just the deep, dark blues, depression. Well, I find that I feel great around a 1. A 1 on that scale is where I really want to be. But a lot of times we don't understand that about ourselves. So this expectation of how we should be feeling, according to maybe somebody else who's created that expectation for us, versus how we're actually feeling, it can be really impactful to recognize that.
For sure. Is it like a scale? Is it like these things that you could put on there? Like, are they like limited? Is it like, could I put like alcohol use and drug use on this, or is it just like about like my TV addiction and my junk food addiction?
All of it. And there are some things like, Simon, even working out, I've worked out to a fault. I've run too much, those types of things, when we're just using them to escape this, whatever that pain may be, just to avoid something.
Yeah.
Then it can be any number of things if you're just thinking about, say, working out, for example, like that can be impactful. It could drain your energy. Totally. On that scale of vitality. You're just not aware that you're doing it, or overdoing it, I should say.
And is there like a pre-test before I would engage with this application? Because it's like, when do I know that I've got like a problem? I think for a lot of people, when we're talking about, like, let's just say more serious addictions, yes, get really deep into it, and they're like right at the far end before somebody else even realizes that they might be going through something like really serious, like alcohol, drugs, pornography, things like that, like before we start thinking it might be a problem, we're like really far down the path. So like, is there like a decent way of like pre-testing whether like this, that I do have a problem?
Right. That, Simon, is a great question. So there will be an assessment, but I am creating resources and a support system that will include professional mental health and other professionals, around a holistic well-being, so that those types of things can be addressed. I am in mental toughness. My background is in performance psychology. And so my idea going into this is that we all have the same potential to improve our lives in a way that embraces a natural zest and energy for life that a lot of us are escaping using those tools and don't even realize we're doing it. So yes, there'll be an assessment, and those types of things will be addressed, and members of the community will be supported if those types of things should arise.
And is the user experience of this tool, I was just thinking about like the type of individual who might be anxious or depressed or going through something. The natural tendency is to like isolate and like be alone and not connect. But you did mention the fact that there are like, connective aspects to like the community side of this application. So is it very much like once you go on the app and you start using it, like, is it more geared towards actually connecting with other people who are going through the same type of thing? Or is it like, or is it not?
Well, there is no app. So we're just using like a community forum, and that'll be introduced in January. And there's also the option, you don't have to connect with the community at all. All of the tools will be available through the website as downloads. So there's no need to be socially involved if that's beyond an individual's comfort level.
And is it a paid thing? Do you have to pay for it?
No.
Okay, that's really cool. I mean, I think there's a lot of good like self motivation to actually paying for something and investing into it. But obviously, having a free tool such as this is also incredibly powerful as well. So that's great.
Thank you. Yeah.
What's performance psychology, by the way?
So it's really mental skills that are designed to improve performance or work your best in whatever performance arena you work in or perform in, say sports, athletics, performing arts, those types of things. So it's really skills-based, geared toward that, how to manage stress levels during competition, how to focus and find clarity in what you're doing, those types of things. However, I have always been driven to focus on real world application of those skills. So that's what I'm hoping to do with #Binging Sober.
That's really cool. I mean, I've spoken to actually quite a lot of people in regards to substance abuse and like porn addictions and alcohol addictions and drug addictions quite recently actually on the podcast. And I always ask the question, like, what's the conventional model like doing wrong? I mean, it's such a deep question, whether, from top to the top of governments to health institutes to the general public and all of that. It's a very, very deep question. Like, why do we continue to have like such addiction problems and substance problems? And over the last couple of years, obviously that's just been absolutely like blown out of the water. So like in regards to like our conventional ways of dealing with substances and addictions, clearly it's not like really working, especially on like a mass scale, right? Like I don't think any government program that tries to facilitate a large amount of people is ever really going to work because everyone's just like so individual. I think about like the food pyramids and the food plates and nutrition guidelines that they try and put out for, America, 330 million people. Like it's just not how it's going to ever work. Like it's nonsense. So what do you think that the conventional system is doing wrong when it comes to substance abuse and addiction? And like, is this like, this idea born out of that lack?
That's a great question. And I really want to focus on we're talking here about convention. And one of my missions, my goal is to get people to advocate for themselves and really own their own wellness. And I know I've heard you say those things too. Like it's really important that we're not just falling into groupthink. What everybody else is doing, that's what I'm going to do. And that may not impact me in the same way. Mm-hmm. So this was really born out of just my realizing just having a moment that I was using these things to escape, not even to escape reality, to avoid a trauma that I'd buried and I wasn't even aware that I buried it. And that I was just, really struggling to find my way in the world using the absolute wrong means. And it was just, I think I heard you say that you played football in the UK and drinking was a huge part of the culture. Well, I was in the Navy for 11 years and that was very much a part of the culture there too. When you're in that group think tank, you don't really realize the impact that it's having on you. So I think the same can be said about convention. Like either that barrel, let's say the barrel of convention, is going to control you if you're a passive rider on the train of convention, or you say, wait a minute, this is really in my control, and these are the things that I can do regardless of what the guidelines and the rules and what have you say.
Yeah, I think humans are fantastic at like innovating, and we can just kind of see in regards to just like technology, like even like we have like the latest iPhone, and it's no different from like, let's say an iPhone 13 and iPhone 14. Like there's no real difference between the two of them. Might be like a little bit, but like we just like constantly have to have a new thing, and that actually drives innovation to create different things, right? And the way that you've created this really cool system, which I'm very looking forward to see how it unfolds and how it develops, and it's gonna grow organically, and it's probably going to shift and change and do all these wonderful things organically with the community. And I think we need those types of innovative tools to capture people before they really get to that point within their addiction where it's like, it's breaking up families, and it's people losing their jobs. Absolutely. And their health is in such a manner that they are having to engage in like harsh drugs or surgeries or, long programs, which, like obviously have their place. But if we can support people on that journey, then it's just going to reduce those amount of people that get to that like level where it's just like, taking down their lives, and it's ending up being like quite expensive to just like, oh my gosh, to the healthcare system, which is like a big problem, right?
Absolutely.
Just over the last like couple, like 2-3 years, like how has the idea, so first of all, like when did you have this like idea to like create this program, and has the last few years with COVID like did that inspire it? Did that like inspire your need to get this going like right away? Because I don't know about you, but like it's interesting that so many more people are just turning towards substances and addictions, to whether that's like Netflix or TV or just distraction, right?
Yep.
Excess. Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yes, this pandemic, one of the things that I'm sure it's done for a lot of people, and it did for me, that I really questioned what I was doing with my voice. I had a very strong mission in the military, and that's something that I've been missing in my life. And during the pandemic, being, isolated like a lot of us were, I really wanted to re-engage with, the world after it in a way that was purposeful and made sense in my life. I have 3 young adults that have recently left the house, so that obviously played a part in all of this. But it was really inspired. Benching Sober was really inspired from my time in the military. So I was just a trigger warning. I know that it's hard to talk about. It's hard to hear. But for anyone who's out there who has been exposed to trauma involving sexual assault, that is what happened to me in my early years in the military. My mental toughness that we all see as this really good thing, and I'll get back to that later because I think it's really important to redefine some of these terms that we use in a way that make them more useful and effective. But I really, really adopted the stoicism and the mental toughness and the grit of the military environment. And when this assault happened, I was blacked out drunk. I had way too much to drink, and trusted these people that I was around. But it happened the next day when I woke up in the same house. I took full responsibility. I had a moment where I was no longer a child. Nobody was coming to save me in that moment. I had to decide what to do. And my natural inclination was to take full responsibility. And I faced the people involved the next day that I saw them and threatened them and said, you're going to forget about this just like I am. And that's exactly what I did. And that was 20 years ago. So I just went on along with my life, and that trauma, that pain was coming out in other ways, using a lot of these escape tools that we're talking about to avoid that pain, to avoid any of the feelings around it. I was not a nice person. I was pretty harsh and cold and unfeeling, and I was a robot, and I was a great sailor, but I was just avoiding that trauma using these escape tools. When I was mostly at home, because I was on a ship, I had experiences for days, weeks, sometimes months out at sea where I didn't have access to a lot of those things, and started noticing the very drastic change in my state of mind, in my well-being. And, I was 25, 24. So at that point in my life, I was not as self-aware as I am now. And so I didn't really notice that. I wasn't really taking it into account that that's what was happening. I would go back home. I would go back to my escape tools, and I would just forget all about how great I felt until I got out of the Navy, and just kind of naturally, and this is a big part of what I want to share with Binging Sober, is that once you start doing this, taking longer periods of sobriety, I'm not talking about complete abstinence unless like we've already talked about, there's a legitimate health concern that needs to be addressed apart from this, which I'm a huge advocate for that support. But I'm talking about taking just a few days, a week, just like I was doing on the ship naturally, a month, and noticing, because that's where this awareness, control, and balance piece comes from, noticing how you feel, how that impacts your life. I mean, it can be 3 days. Anyone can try it for 3 days. And so eventually I just naturally started to crave the abstinence from those things because it felt so good. I noticed that I was naturally starting to crave that. And so during the pandemic, at the beginning of the pandemic, I noticed that I was turning to alcohol. I was binge watching TV. I was, binge eating crazy foods that I wouldn't normally eat, all of those things to avoid feelings. And after the pandemic, I realized that I need to share this. Like, this has become my mission since the military, is to share this and to get people to understand that balance, that place where we feel good, and it's consistent so long as we have the recipe to get there.
No, huge. I think that's such valuable information and insight, and I really appreciate you sharing that, because obviously so much of the positive things that happen in the world, these initiatives, come from people recognizing things that happen in their lives that they may have got wrong, or they're just different personalities that we had when we were 20 than we were 30 or 40, right?
Exactly.
And it's so interesting to retrospectively look back at those things. And just going back to the isolation that comes with, let's say, depression or anxiety or other psychological conditions, or an actual physical lockdown where you are cut off from community, society, your family, other human beings, and they're very much interconnected, because at the end of the day, we don't want to deal with the feelings that come up in our, for me, a feeling is the end product of an experience. There's emotions that come up for us. It's biochemical. It's ingrained in all of us. And if it's coming up for us internally when we're in an isolated state of depression or anxiety, or physically put away from other people, we are going to immediately go to something like TV or alcohol or food or other substances, whatever it might be, in order to deal with those feelings. Because in my opinion, probably, yeah, I think the only way that we can really start to digest and go through those feelings that come up for us is to communicate it with other human beings that can be vulnerable with us, that can be open with us, that can hold us in our heart, that can actually be with us and understand us. And even if it's just like listening, or it's just a hug, or it's just crying and getting it out, like you can't get that from just being on your own. It's impossible, because it's literally frequency and energy inside of us, creating matter, creating a internal personality of like maybe turmoil and anger and rage and jealousy and all these like negative things. And you can't get through that type of an experience and get through those behaviors that aren't serving you and can lead to serious addictions. You can't do that without a community, and you can't do that without friends or other human beings around you. And I've been doing this podcast for a couple of years now, speaking to some amazing practitioners who share so much wealth and knowledge. And the biggest theme that's come up is community, and trying to do things on your own. I had this chat yesterday with a guy who was also in the military for like 10 years. And you can't successfully, there's a very small percentage of like people who can just like do things on their own and be really successful with it. It's certainly possible, but it's super, super rare. It takes a quite very unique individual, quite robotic individual to be able to do that, to get out of dark places just like purely on your own. But like for most people, like for me, like you've got to have human beings around you. You've got to have like love come into your heart. You've got to have joy and happiness and gratitude coming into you, as well as expressing it out, right? And extending that frequency out to other people. And it's just awesome that you're able to create this type of this program and incentive to support those people, especially before they get to like a real place of darkness.
Yes. And I relate so much to what you just said. As I was saying, my time in the military, post-trauma, I really just closed myself off to everyone, thinking that was the way it had to be. Like I was so strong and I can handle this all on my own. And I never even, it wasn't until I started healing from that, which took me saying the words as if to another human being, for that weight to just lift off of me. I mean, talking about it, every time I say it, I feel it again. It's just like this, just lifting or sharing of that, and it just really lessens the burden of it. And that, just saying it, I mean, that was kind of the trigger of my healing journey. And it sounds so simple, and of course it's not, but to the people that are listening, to be inspired, hopefully to want to feel that lift as well. I think it's really important. I know it's one thing to say it, and then a whole nother thing to look at yourself and say, I need to heal this. But gosh, it's so like rewarding and life-changing, and definitely it like impacts every single cell and every single experience and just everything.
Yeah, I just looking at the world at the moment in regards to the anxieties and depressions and substance abuses and addictions, I think that we seriously struggle to get out of those types of things ourselves. And I don't mean like trying to deal with it purely on your own, but like recognizing that something's going on and then reaching out and asking for support and asking for help. I think that comes from a serious like lack of teaching kids about responsibility. Absolutely. And teaching young adults about responsibility, because you can be responsible for a bunch of things at a job for sure, and actually like tick boxes, but like being responsible for yourself and taking care of yourself and checking in and making sure that you are in like a healthy state, and you're taking care of your mind, you're taking care of your body. And when things do get a bit too much, which is inevitable for everybody at some point, taking responsible steps to support yourself and ask for help. But because, in my opinion, we just don't teach or don't give kids at a young age responsibility, we might ask a kid, our child at 15 or 16 or 17 to get like a part-time job or something. But I think kids from like 5 years of age and maybe even younger are capable of taking responsibility around the house and recognizing how important that is and how empowering that is, and how much of a role you actually have to play in society, within the family, as your own individual. And if we don't actually have the skill set to take responsibility, how are we going to do it when we have got all these distractions coming in, and they're coming in from all over the place, and it leads us into behaviors that just really don't serve us. Like, we're just not going to be able to like break through that horrible subconscious habitual pattern that just keeps us like grabbing onto these things that are just like blocking us from what's actually really going on for us. It's just really tricky.
It is tricky. And you're talking about what I keep hearing. That's just one of the things we really need to talk about, is this downward spiral. I always hear we're caught in a downward spiral. It's like it's a saying that we love to use around mental health. And that's what it is this, I want to feel better. So I'm going to drink this glass of wine, and then it's going to interrupt my sleep. And then tomorrow I'm going to have a headache, and I'm going to be unproductive, and my anxiety is going to be crazy through the roof. And that's going to cause me to want to escape again. And so I repeat the pattern and repeat the pattern, and you get further and further down that scale, right? Like down the spiral. What we don't have is this language around the upward spiral, around healing, around what those things are that we can do to reverse the impact of what we've habitually done, to then reprogram ourselves to want to do those things instead, or to find balance in them. Because I don't want to be told that I can't do something. Now, I do understand that there are people and times when we need that support. And as we've already talked about, like actual professional support with those types of challenges. But if you tell me, Simon, that I can't have popcorn, I'm going to think about the popcorn all the time, and that's not going to help me. So what I'm talking about is like being consistent with moderation is such an important thing that it's like we don't understand as a society. Like, just be consistent with moderation. Like, don't access, escape, and just drilling yourself down that downward spiral.
Yeah, I think being conscious and aware is obviously a big part of that. I was just thinking as you're talking there about me when I was 20 against me, I'm 38 now, like how different my like ups and downs would be. Like this, like even just through a day, like you're not going to just be like up. There's going to be like blips here and there. But when those like blips happen of like maybe feeling a bit like anxious or stressed out or tired or worried or whatever that might be, I feel like when you're in more of a conscious state and you're aware of your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviors, your ability to respond to that dip is just so much more profound, because you're able to like catch yourself before you start dipping way too low.
Just reacting to it, you're responding, you're being an active participant in your life.
Exactly. And then if somebody who is like, let's just say 90% of what they're thinking, feeling, and doing is a little bit more unconscious, let's just say they're like, I don't know, 20, 21 years of age, and they've not really had any big responsibilities yet in their life, and they're just like kind of just like going through the motions of life. When something is causing them to feel anxious or depressed, I just feel like that ability to become aware of where you're going, it literally becomes diminished, because that person is living in such an unconscious manner that they're not really aware of like where their psychological state is or where their physical state is. And by the time they realize it, they've got like a disease, or they've got like issues, or they've got like they've started recognizing that something's really wrong. It's kind of like it's just kind of like too late. Like a lot of damage has been done, and it's like a really tough ladder to climb at that point, because it's just gone unchecked for so long.
Yeah. But there's hope, and we need language around that. And that's the part of the conversation that's missing. I heard you say that I believe it was your mom that had the surgery, and the doctor told her to have ice cream or something like crazy. Yeah. And that's just, it's kind of the same point that, how long ago is that? Years ago, where we just didn't have the knowledge or the language around nutrition and its importance, because we didn't understand the science behind it yet, or to the extent we do now. It's the same thing with mental health, with this downward spiral versus the upward spiral. We need to create language around it. And that's what I want to do with this community.
That's really cool. I think that upward spiral certainly needs to be highlighted a lot more. I often talk about in my nutrition practice about somebody who starts to work with me. With any therapeutic alliance between like a client and a practitioner, it's never going to be this like continuous upward spiral of success to joy and happy rainbow land.
Right.
It's always there's always going to be blips along the way, and it's just inevitable. And once you can recognize that, you can realize the value in those like slips.
Yep.
And you can get back in the saddle. But a lot of people, because we probably don't have the language and the communication around that upward spiral, consider that like tiny blip to be just complete failure, and they can't do it, and the motivation goes, and then it's down.
Yeah. That's where that downward spiral starts. It's a very fast and slippery slope if you're not paying attention to it. Yeah.
You were talking about redefinition earlier. Are there some key things that you wish to be redefined?
Mental toughness, for one.
What does that mean?
Yeah, like the 90s. So mental toughness to me, how I've redefined it, is learning the skills, because a lot of them are not natural. We may pick them up in our environment growing up, depending on what our family is like, what our parents are like, those sorts of things. But a lot of them aren't natural. You have to learn these skills that help you to thrive, meaning cope really well through challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So whereas like the 90s edition of mental toughness is like this grit, this rub some dirt on it and get back in the game. And I have a lot of that in me, but I think it's important. It's exactly what you just said. Those blips, like those dips in your day, those dips in your week, those dips in your month, in your life. That's the balance. You can't have the super, super joy, the rainbows and butterflies, if you don't have the darkness too. That's just the way it works. And as somebody who was ignoring all of my emotions and not feeling a thing for over a decade, it was numb and horrible. And the moment that I started to feel, I was able to make those connections with people that are so important that you're talking about, and able to see that, oh my gosh, I feel amazing. And I just had this crap day yesterday. And that's the point, isn't it? Like both of them have to be true. Like both of them are included. And so the mental toughness definition I really want to talk about is it's not just about being grit and strong and like, fierce. It includes our mental health. It includes our mental health. Mental health and taking care of your mental health is mental toughness.
Mm-hmm.
You're really focused on learning how your mind works and how to thrive during your personal challenges, which may look different than someone else's. There's not one recipe. It's such an individual thing. And that's why it's so important to own the responsibility of that as individuals.
Yeah, the mental toughness for me, like a more like old school definition, is like just being like kind of void of emotions that and that's obviously not a healthy way to deal with anything, I don't think. But like when you were talking about like how it would be very, very beneficial in, let's just say, a military position, because you kind of like don't have the time to, like, in a battle situation, to sit down and cry and be emotional, like that's not really quite ideal. So they kind of drill that in, but that filters throughout society, right? Especially within men, like you've got to be mentally tough, and don't let your emotions like get the better of you. Like, I think it's circumstantial in regards to, I think if you are cognitively aware of your mental and physical capabilities, like you could be running like a triathlon or an Ultraman or something, whatever, an Ironman, and you feel like you want to quit, that's your body just trying to tell you that you're done, but then you can have like the mental capacity to be aware that, like I've got more in me, and I'm aware of that. That's having a conversation with your mind and your body, rather than this ridiculous idea that all of the time I should just be ignoring my emotions, because like showing weakness and being, and being mentally weak is just like a sign of like not being a good human being. Right, it doesn't really make any sense. And we I don't know why, but we also don't like to really look at words and define them, because mental toughness definitely would have meant something different to me when I was 20 to what I feel like now. Like it's, I was stronger and more physically able when I was 20. So I probably thought like I was mentally tough. I could do these things. But now I'm like 40 and I have 2 young kids. I have a wife, like, which engages like your emotions like you would never believe, and trains your patience, and it trains your love, it trains your responsibilities. So I believe now, like, my mental capacity, my mental strength, whatever that might be, is so like well rounded. But it's that's built out of I think that's built out of being capable and responsible, and not necessarily about like just like avoiding my emotions and just like going forward through things. And yeah, it's interesting. And I think, yeah, the language piece is super important, because yeah, we'll take the idea of like mental toughness or mental weakness, and we will not really analyze it and go through like what that actually means, and we just go along with it.
Exactly. And I'm glad you brought up that example in particular, because we tend to think of mental toughness around the military, around athletics, around all of these things that not all of us do.
Mm-hmm.
But mental toughness in this more well-rounded way, where it's really based on the individual and the challenges that you have and the challenges that hopefully you can look at and become aware of and discover the things that you can control around them and focus on that. Like that's the important thing. You don't have to be an extreme athlete to use these skills to improve your life.
Yeah, it's certainly, I think, generational in regards to like that type of military mental toughness. It's kind of like leaked into society. Like my parents, and especially my grandparents, they were in World War II, right? So it was like they were in a significant part of their life, they were in this like fight or flight literal war situation, where it was like that mental toughness meant like if you were to like let your emotions get a better of you, it would be the difference between life and death, and that was a significant part of their experience of life, which is traumatic, which instills, which creates like trauma inside the body that has to kind of like go out anywhere. And then that like unfortunately gets like parented on, and then parented on again. And I'm not saying that we're out of like war times, because there's crazy stuff going on in the world at the moment, but I like to think that we are me as a parent, for example, like I'm really trying to be aware that I'm not parenting like I was parented, because I know my parents were parented by a generation that was all about like that.
Oh my gosh, 100% relate to you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm trying to like be super patient with my 3-year-old, who is just this like fireball of emotion, and I can't expect him to have the experience and grasp of being angry like I do, or like I would expect like another adult to be, so I have to have some patience with that. But like, I don't know, like 3 generations back, it would just be like smack on the back of their head or wooden spoon, and that clearly is not the way to do things. There's too much research now, and like if you were to just like analyze that type of parenting to like today, you'd be like, yeah, probably not good. So yeah, it's just interesting how like I feel like with this like gentle parenting idea, and like men allowing themselves to be open and vulnerable with other people and their own selves, there's certainly like more conversation in regards to that piece. Yeah
It's like, be mentally tough. Well, what is that? Like, I don't even know what is it. Yeah Well, we talk about redefining sobriety, because that is a big one as well.
Sure.
If I were to ask you, if you want to take 10 days off from all of your things that you think you love, that might not entice you. Like, Simon, I want you to be sober for 10 days. We have this, like, it's again one of those things we haven't examined. Like, that doesn't sound fun at all. Well, sobriety is it's our natural state of mind. And I think that a lot of us don't know that. It's blissful and like it's pure joy if you feel actually clean and clear. And I'm sure you know this in all of your, what you've done in your professional life. Like, actually having a clear mind is very interesting, and something that we use as escape tools to get out of. So if you haven't taken a few days off from those things, then you don't know what it feels like. So again, the definition is really individual and has to be experienced, I think, to really understand what it means. But this idea that it's a joyful place to go, I hope to inspire people to try it, so that, eventually we can be, going out to happy hour with a friend and ordering a soda with lime, and someone says, oh, why aren't you drinking? You can say, oh, I'm I'm binging sober. Thank you. And it'd be like a good thing. Like,
Yeah.
oh, that makes a lot of sense. I want to do that too. It's not like
Yeah.
this sustained, horrible thing. And there's a huge sober curious movement, which I'm really, really excited about, mostly surrounding alcohol. So I think that we tend to forget there are all of these other things that are just right at our fingertips that we use and abuse that do the same thing in a different way to our bodies and our minds and our lives.
Yeah, I mean, we're so unbelievably spoiled in regards to what we can access all of the time.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Food, alcohol, entertainment. And I find a lot of joy in regards to being able to step back from those things in certain times. Like basically, I only will impart in alcohol during like the summer, during my like soccer season, because it's like we have our soccer game and we have the cooler afterwards, and there's like 20 guys around there, like in the families, and we're drinking beer. It's awesome. It's a wonderful environment. But like in the winter, I've got no real taste to drink alcohol. I'm not going to buy alcohol and bring it home and drink at home with my I know that's just not particularly healthy, and it's not something that I personally want to do. But I also find like a lot of self-motivation in like not drinking for like 5 months or 6 months or whatever that might be, and like replacing that with like exercise. So I know I've got to experience it in the in that not being in that kind of like spoiled nature, because we're not supposed to be like well fed and warm at the same time. It's a very unusual position for humans to be in, considering the tiny blip of human existence that we've experienced with this like amazing world that we live in right now. Like the 99.99% of human existence has been like kind of like it's been bad. Like we die young, it'd be a struggle. We'd have good times, we'd have bad times, but at the end of the day, we would very rarely be warm and fed at the same time. And I feel like it's a quite natural environment, a natural state for us to have a lot of lack. And there's also a lot of like, I'm a practicing stoic when I've got the time, but like recognizing that taking things away will make you really, really appreciate them in the long term. Maybe not with like alcohol and things like that, but like there are like really interesting stoic practices where like spend 2 nights in a row of the week sleeping on the floor, or like eat 1 meal a day, like just to like really end up like appreciating these things that you do have. And it ends up wrapping a lot of happiness, joy, and gratitude to those everyday things that we're just unconsciously just assume that we should have. And it just changes your relationship with so many different things that we really like take for granted.
Just reset.
I think we're supposed to be in that in that phase more often than not. Like we're coming into the winter months now. Like I know you're in Texas, so I don't know about that. I know you've got storms and stuff, but I think it's probably pretty warm there most of the time.
It is.
Okay, cool.
From what I know, I've only lived here. I've only lived in Houston, this area, for a few months now, so it's to be determined. Okay. It stays pretty warm. Yeah.
Okay, well, where I live, we have like seasons. We have like harsh seasons. So like last week, the weather has just like dropped by 10 degrees, and it's quite clearly a message from like the just the seasons changing, that like I need to start thinking about what I'm doing with my body and what I'm doing with my energy, because like it's a hibernation time. There's no doubt about it. Just because we've got electricity and food and all the same stuff all year round, it doesn't necessarily mean that I should be doing the same sort of output during those like darker, colder times. Like, no, I need to be aware of like the environment changing around me. That's how I've evolved as a human being. And it's important to take notice of those things and to be careful. Yeah. Cause like in the winter, your digestion is going to be significantly slower. Your ability to break down alcohol is going to be weaker. So it's important that we recognize these things. But again, it comes down to responsibility and being more conscious about what is going on.
Absolutely. The future belongs to those who can self-regulate.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's true.
That's really, really cool.
Right there. We've got to know how to use it for advantage.
Colleen, how can people connect with you? I've got a couple of websites that I'm going to stick into show notes, but like what's the best place to go to learn more about what you're doing?
ColleenRyan-Hensley.com. There were some tech issues today, but it should be good to go. And armoredgrace.com. But really, hashtag binging sober. Look out for the hashtag. And on Instagram, follow me on Instagram at Colleen Ryan-Hensley. And if you would like to sign up for updates on the official launch in January of 2023, definitely please go to ColleenRyan-Hensley.com.
Beautiful. Well, I'll make sure that all that information is in our show notes, and we'll get you linked up in social media as well. But I really thank you for taking the time with me today. I really, really enjoyed our conversation.
Me too, Simon. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you. Well, that is it for this episode of True Hope Cast, the official podcast of True Hope Canada. I'll make sure all the information you need to get connected with Colleen is in the show notes, so you can do that. Leave us a review on iTunes if you haven't yet. But that's it. We'll see you next week.